Huh, for once I beat Jimmy to the studio. I guess he had too much of a good time at Kevin Gomera's show last night at the Markalite Lounge. Well, I better check my email before he gets here. I have a couple of audio messages. This one's from Karone. Man, it traveled far. Let's hear.
Hello, Nate. It's been a while, hasn't it? I hear you've started a Power Rangers podcast now. What's it called? The Power Trip? Clever name. By the time you get this, you'll probably be talking about the craziest parts of my past. My past. I've been dealing with that a lot the last few months. The board manipulating me into becoming Miss Perkins showed me that I am still vulnerable to my dark side. Astronema. She wasn't me. But she was me. Or at least the me that I was given. Just like Miss Perkins. Anyway, after meditating with them since leaving the island, the monks here at KO35 suggested I go on a pilgrimage to the places of significance in my life, both the good and the bad. They think it'll help me reconnect with my true self. I made a list, starting with my childhood home. I haven't seen that place in years. I don't know how long this will take, but I'll be on this journey for at least a few months. I'll have a lot to tell you the next time I message you. Take care, Nate, and tell Jimmy I said hi. Goodbye.
Wow, she's dealing with a lot. Huh. You can't run from the past, but it doesn't have to define your future. I'm a platitude generator worthy of Hallmark today. Now, here's another one from, oh boy, Raymund.
Hello, Marchand. Normally, I'd have Gary transcribe my electronic mail, but he's consulting with your sister about whether she can make citizens arrest as a supernatural lady of action and have legal protection in case she needs to kill a rapscallion like with that Church of Mothrianity business a few weeks ago.
Great.
To save time and finger wear, I'm using this transistorized gramophone to record a message. You might be wondering why I haven't gotten my green Go Ranger suit and boomerang from Kenosha. Well, I'm here to tell you it isn't my fault. My nephew Aston is a high-waisted ankle-biter who never cut himself loose from his mother's apron strings. He doesn't know a gumshoe from a private dick. In other words, he hasn't found them yet. I don't even remember where I stashed that mystery man of action suit. I only have so much space in this dome of mine, and I have to make room for important things, like legal precedents for arguing the sentience of kaiju. Regardless, I'll let you know when I get it. Abyssinia! How do you turn this confounded thing off?
Okay, Boomer. Alright, Jimmy's here. Time to get ready for today's show with my guest, Judas Hamilton. Live from the KIJU studios in beautiful Ogasawara, this is the Monster Island Film Vault, episode 61, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Green with Evil featuring Michael Hamilton. Hello, Kaiju lovers, and welcome to the Monster Island Film Vault, a podcast seeking entertainment and enlightenment through tokusatsu. I am your host, Monster Island's film curator, Nate Marchand. Yeah, sure, Jimmy. For once, it's not you having a beef with our guest today, because with me today in a special Patreon-sponsored episode is the co-founder of Kaiju Ramen Magazine, the co-host of Kaiju Weekly, and my co-host on the Power Trip, the traitorous Michael Hamilton.
What? The traitorous Michael Hamilton? Come on, man.
You heard me. You heard me. This episode
that hurts that really hurts my feelings, Nate.
Did you forget what happened a few months ago? This was supposed to happen in December.
The last couple of months have been a blur because I have been diligently working with Travis on Kaiju Ramen Volume 1 and Kaiju Ramen Issue 5 out now in digital form and out in physical form in the next couple of weeks. Man, I don't know what you're talking about. Like I didn't realize you had this pent up animosity towards me.
Did you not remember that you were supposed to do this in December? This was supposed to be the season finale for season 2, but I had to postpone it until now because you abandoned me to Yeti because that weirdo British guy who's also Scottish bribed you with something. I don't know what it was, but he bribed you with something. I'm a little hurt.
Okay, so to be fair, I don't remember any of this. I may have been on vacation at the time. But given the fact that you seem so hurt by this and you're worked up, I think we need to bring the temperature down just a little bit, Nate. And I'm going to go ahead and preemptively say, I'm sorry. But I do recall receiving a package in the mail containing a blue metallic Gigabrain Ghidorah, a Sofubi, and I guess that's maybe what you're talking about?
I'm guessing so. Did it come like a week or two before Christmas?
Actually, as a matter of fact, it did. Yeah, it did.
Yeah. That was... You might want to check the address on there. It'll probably say from Monster Island, courtesy of William H. George III. Yeah.
Well, it did have a note in the box. It said, "Don't bother coming to the island," and it gave a date, and then it just says, I thought that was weird. Like, okay, like, all right, like I thought it was like some ominous like omen thing. Like the universe is trying to tell me like don't come to Monster Island because Ghidorah is going to attack me. But
okay, no, not quite that. It was more like a Yeti is going to attack your friends Nate and Danny and Travis.
We'll see. See, you survived, and it made you guys stronger men and stronger podcasters because of it.
I'm pretty sure at least one of us reached next level podcaster status during that whole ordeal. Because
I don't know. So I did listen to that episode, and I have to kind of give the devil his due and say that what is his name?
WHG3 is what we call him.
Okay. So his method acting in that episode was superb. Like to convince me, the lowly audio listener at the time, that he was actually drunk on air or he actually fell out of his chair after Jimmy tased him. That was brilliant. Totally brilliant.
Exactly, Jimmy. He did not tase him. He karate chopped him. Kirk Fu style.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Jimmy got tased. He's the one who got tased. And that wasn't method acting.
Wow. I'm very impressed that man was able to function after all that alcohol.
Well, considering that we were watching Yeti, I don't blame him. I kind of wished he had shared some of the booze.
I mean, I've seen Yeti. Travis is weirdly obsessed. Well, it's not Travis. Our friend Elijah is weirdly obsessed with it. I've seen it. It's not a good movie.
Kaiju Quarantine 2, man.
Yeah, it didn't drive me to drink the last time I watched it.
Could have done that to me. But anyway, all right. You know what? Let it be known to everyone here on the island, the hatchet is buried.
I appreciate that because
I appreciate the apology. And it sounds like you at least got something good out of it.
I did.
I'm okay with it. Besides, I have to maintain at least a good professional relationship because we're podcasting about Power Rangers.
Right. And let me just say this. If this discussion would have escalated any further, I could have kicked your ass.
Jimmy, you're the traitor now. You jerk.
I totally look. Thank you, Jimmy, for siding with me on that. Just because Nate is slightly a bit taller than me, his small girly hands wouldn't been able to do very much in a fist fight. I don't think.
I seem to be having some flashbacks to the end of a certain Power Ranger movie.
I don't know what you're talking about, sir.
Well, if you ever decide to escalate it, let's just say I'll be taking care of business. Anyway. Anyway, speaking of Power Rangers, that is what you sponsored.
It is. It is true.
You want to tell everybody, this is MIFV brought to you by Michael Hamilton. This is the first Patreon-sponsored MIFV Max member episode of 2022. And what is it going to be about, sir?
It's going to be about the 5-parter that changed Power Ranger history, Green with Evil.
Yes, a 5-part miniseries that basically it's a movie. In fact, I seem to remember there was a time when I think all 5 of those episodes got released on VHS or something as basically a movie.
Yeah, they did. They got released as just an extended, like there was no like jump cuts. There was no like there was no cuts between. It was like it was just the fade to black and then it goes straight into the next episode. I remember that because I do actually have that VHS somewhere, and I remember it was spliced together as an actual movie. Like it seemed like an actual movie.
Yeah, which is actually why I was like, you know what? 5 episodes, basically a movie. Sounds like a good idea to me. Plus, it's a good tie-in with The Power Trip, a journey through the Power Rangers franchise, which is another podcast you and I do. In fact, we did talk about in our, I believe it was Mighty Morphin Season 1, where we say, hey, you want to learn more about Green with Evil specifically? Come listen to this show. So we're making good on a promise.
Right. And because our listeners with attitude are probably wondering where that extra information is, because we have a ton of downloads on that episode. Yeah, it's impressive.
It's been very popular. Very, very popular. That's a good idea, Jimmy. If we play some epic music for you, Michael, would you like to give the kaiju lovers and perhaps the listeners with attitude a plot synopsis of Green with Evil?
I would, actually. That sounds like a lot of fun. All
right, Michael. On the count of 3, I will cue the music, and you can get on it. 1, 2, 5. I mean 3.
The evil space witch Rita Repulsa hatches yet another plan to destroy the Power Rangers by invoking the 6th power coin. But before she can, the Moon Crew must find a worthy champion in the form of yet another teenager with attitude, Tommy Oliver. With the Rangers' mentor gone and the seemingly insurmountable power of the Green Ranger looming, our heroes find a way to break Rita's spell and bring Tommy back to his senses. Well, thank you, Jimmy. It's not quite the level of what Nate can do on the Power Trip, but I tried.
I'm like the plot synopsis guy on every show I do now.
Well, you have the perfect plot synopsis announcer voice.
Last time on Dragon Ball Z.
And before we get started, I do have a bone to pick with Jimbo over there.
Uh-oh.
You know what you did, Jimmy. I put in a request to come to the island, and typically you honor my request, but you told me to fend for myself. So you know what I did? I had to go back into my archive of prop toys and pull out a very special something.
Oh.
And that is...
What the heck?
Is the Dragon Dagger. And because I had to do that... I actually found a way to get to the island here myself. So, not to be outdone by your past guest, Dallas, I too summoned the Dragon Zord. So, thanks for nothing, Jimmy. Well, you know, you're slipping. And speaking of slipping, when I got here, I noticed that you hid all of your special stash in the back. Well, you know, greed and alcoholism go hand in hand with you, doesn't it? Oh, I'm just joking, Jimmy. Come on. People who can wield a Kung Fu karate chop like you are not to be trifled with.
Oh, stop it. You're bloating his ego now.
I still love Jimmy, but it was a little bit disappointing that I at least thought I was going to come here in Uber Mogura.
Yeah. He's been trying to get a side hustle started with that thing now through Uber, apparently.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So, Jimmy, tell the truth. Were you just working that day and just didn't have time to get me, or what? I mean, that's fine, man. All you had to do was tell me. You didn't have to just leave me hanging. Like, you basically ghosted me, and I had to fend for myself.
Yeah, but in Jimmy's defense, you got the Dragon Sword, and I'm sure Mr. Oliver's trying to find it right now. And you might want to be a little careful with that, because I know the powers that be are trying to get him to make an appearance here on the island.
Oh, after we arrived in Ogasawara Bay, I told him to go back and go find Tommy. And so, Jimmy, I need to ride back home after this episode. Really? Like, not even the SY3? You're going to send me back in the Garuda?
Oh, well, I mean, it is, it's attached to the other big, robot dragon, Mechagodzilla, although it's a good thing the Dragon Zord's not here. From what I understand, Mechagodzilla and the Dragon Zord don't get along. No,
they don't. There's been some issues there for sure.
Yeah.
Because, you've got Mechagodzilla, who thinks that the Dragon Zord ripped him off. The Dragon Zord thinks that Mechagodzilla ripped him off. Yeah. It's a thing. It's a thing.
It's a thing for sure. But speaking of Dragon Zords, that is one of many things that get introduced in this 5-parter. You were not kidding when you said that this was a momentous thing. Now, I just realized I should give a quick bit of background. For those who don't know, this was a big 5-part storyline in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which, again, for those who don't know, was created by Haim Saban and Shuki Levi, and they made it by basically adapting the Super Sentai series Zhu Ranger for American audiences. They took most of the superhero footage and then filmed new scenes around it with new American actors as the heroes. So and you know who you are, would call Power Rangers the bastardization of Super Sentai. But that's the long and short of it. So what we're seeing here was, for what I recall, looking at the special features on the Shout Factory DVDs, they were going through the footage and they're like, oh, look, there's this green guy. Okay. Well, there's this Green Ranger. Okay. Make a note of that. We're going to have to cast this guy. And then he kept coming back and they're like, oh, he's not just a one-off character. Well, okay. Then they noticed that he stayed on a lot longer. So they're like, okay, we need to hire another Ranger.
I mean, that's pretty much it. The Green Power Rangers at this point was already like a worldwide phenomenon. And I feel like when the Green with Evil 5-parter came on television, that just brought everything up to another level for the fan base, because we get introduced to arguably one of the most popular, if not the most popular Ranger in the franchise, which is Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger, through this 5-parter. And, we can go into this later, but this 5-part episode, or this 5-part miniseries in this first season, ended up making huge waves throughout the franchise that have lasted even to this day.
Yeah. This was, I think it technically starts at, Part 1 is actually listed as episode 17 of the series overall.
16.
Okay.
16.
I stand corrected. You got it. You got there before Jimmy did. But regardless, so it's a little ways into the show, and I feel like this was when the show kind of figured itself out, like in this first season. And they really stepped up their game with this in terms of adapting the Sentai and crafting an interesting story around it. It's still campy, as you would expect Power Rangers to be.
Yeah, it's campy, but there's a lot of weight to it, though.
Yeah, there definitely is.
There's a lot of weight, and this 5-parter, when I was rewatching it,
it breaks the formula too. That's the other interesting thing.
It breaks the formula, but there's a lot. But what I was gonna say was there's a lot of weight to this. And it gets progressively better as it goes along. Like, we've already established this on the Power Trip and this is we've made this joke before, but if you really want to establish a threat level with your villain, have them invade the command center.
Yeah, that's for sure. But one thing that I found that was interesting for me as I was doing the research on this is that, unbeknownst to me, each part of this miniseries has its own title. Did you know that?
I did. Yes.
Yeah. I was unaware of that until I started finding all of the discs in the film vault. So, part 1 is Out of Control. Part 2 is Jason's Battle. Part 3 is The Rescue. Part 4 is Eclipsing Megazord, which I actually think might be my favorite title out of the 5. And then Part 5 is Breaking the Spell.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't tell you any of this.
They don't tell you any of this, but it is in the mainline show, in the main disc itself, it is just Green with Evil Part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But on, like you said, on the individual discs for Green with Evil, you do get the episode titles.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that each episode has its own title that indicates what's going on. Like for Eclipsing Megazord, you said is probably your favorite of the 5 parts. Which
my favorite title.
Favorite title. Okay. So that one is really interesting. It's not the most, I would say that Eclipsing Megazord is probably the one where the series kind of gives you your major moment.
Where's Jet? Where's Jet? I think Jet is here today.
Because if I'm remembering correctly, this is the first time the Megazord or the Dinozords have been technically destroyed in scare quotes.
Yeah. Like you said before, there's a lot of weight to this. It feels really dire the whole time because the Rangers are operating without Zordon because Evil Tommy just goes in and trashes the command center, takes out Alpha. And so they don't have Zordon to fall back on for most of it. And so that's one problem they're trying to fix. Well,
the Rangers are truly on their own now. This is, remember when we talked about season 1 on the Power Trip, we talked about how season 1 was all about coming of age and a whole thing about coming, and a whole aspect about that coming of age story is sometimes you have to grow up and do it yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think this 5-parter is a grow up kind of moment for our heroes because they're doing this without their mentor. Zordon leaves in part 1. He doesn't come back till halfway through part 5. So the Rangers are all figuring this out on their own practically with a little bit of help from Alpha. But this 5-parter is where I feel like Jason really steps up as a leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. And I also think who's another character I think really gets the shine in this? It's Billy.
Oh yeah, this is like this 5-parter showcases like Billy's technical prowess. I think if I'm remembering correctly, this is the first episode where part 1 is the first episode where we get introduced to the rad bug. Yeah, the rad bug.
The rad bug. How in blazes is a flying Herbie the Love Bug invented by a teenager in his garage who may or may not be old enough to drive, and Billy is not as rich as Elon Musk? Yes, Jimmy, I know he's technically on Aquatar, but still.
Right?
Still.
I mean,
Oh, wait. Hold that, Jimmy. Hold it. What was that? You have that stupid thing in your garage?
Why the hell didn't you tell me that?
I would have liked to know that too.
Well, then, Jimmy, you're going to send me home in the rad bug this time around.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Apparently, yeah. We're going to have to do that. Yeah. But although, to quote one of my heroes, it belongs in a museum. Anyway.
Now, granted, I will probably have to sign a waiver before I leave because that thing may be on its last leg or on its last wheel at this point.
Yeah,
but
probably.
I'm willing to take the risk.
Yeah. Oh, apparently Jimmy says he's so unimpressed with it, you can just keep it.
Oh, sweet. I'll just use it as my permanent transport now.
Well, there you go. Danny got the Pteranodon bot, you get the rad bug. I hope you're happy.
Nice. I'm not even really a car guy, but I'll take it.
Yeah, but knowing you'll probably sell it.
Nah, I think the nostalgia and the sentimental value. There we go.
There you go.
The sentimental value will start kicking in there.
Yeah, probably. But anyway, yes, Billy gets to shine in this. He gets to use his technical prowess, and not only with the rad bug, but also he fixes Alpha, I think, a couple of times. He spends the whole thing when he's not rangering, trying to fix the computers to get Zordon back. So they're really leaning into him right now on the team. And actually, that's a good thing to bring up, because this Power Rangers and Super Sentai as well is all about the superhero team dynamic. And I do feel like, even though some of the characters get to do more than others in this 5-parter, they all get to have moments where they get to shine. Billy gets to do the technical stuff. Jason, as you put it, really comes into himself as a leader. Kimberly does her best to reach out to Tommy. We also see the beginnings of her, like, as soon as she sees him, she's crushing on him, and they're playing the funny harp music and everything. So it's like, in case you didn't know, although I have opinions about how that turns out, listen to the Power Trip episode on Zeo. You upset me, Kim. I know she was your first crush.
We're not okay. That's enough. That's enough. We're not going there. We don't need a 20-minute diatribe on how.
I understand. We're keeping it on this. We're keeping it on this miniseries. Zach at least gets to have some of the cornier jokes he's had in a while. Zach's wax. Yeah.
Which sounds like a euphemism for something else, but we won't go there.
Yeah. Yeah. Something like that. Trini's probably the one that probably doesn't get as much to do as the rest of them. Although, like I said, Zach is mostly still trying to be the comic relief.
Yeah, Zach, some of the characters take a little bit of a backseat, and this 5-parter focuses on 4 people. Tommy Oliver is the Green Ranger, Kim, who crushes on the Green Ranger. That's that emotional connection there. And then you've got Jason, who is trying to, be the leader of this team in a very dire situation. In fact, I think it was if I think it's in part 4, Jason's speech was something that really kind of like drove it home for me. When he's talking to the Rangers, and it was post, which was the eclipsing the Megazord. Yeah. So this was after they lost the Megazord. Jason says, isn't the smallest chance of victory enough for us to keep fighting?
Yeah.
So that is him trying to pep up his team, because at this point, all the Rangers, including Billy to some degree, have lost hope. Because Zach even looks at Jason. I think it was after he said that line where it's like, but we don't have our Zords. We don't, like, the Green Ranger had, like, we're done for. We're done. Like at this point, I'm paraphrasing, where I think that Jason has the most character development and the character growth in this 5-parter, because there's in part 2 when it's Jason's battle, they really focus in on him and like what impact that makes when you remove your leader from the team. Like it throws everything into disarray. And it's obvious where the Rangers look to Jason as their leader, because they struggle in that episode to really kind of come together and be who they need to be in this moment without their leader. At this point, Zordon is done. He's gone. They can't get him back. Jason is now gone. He's in the dark dimension with Goldar. And, the Rangers are in disarray at this point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Let's talk about that, because the part 2, when he's there and then into a little bit of part 3, is actually one of my favorite sequences or scenes, I guess you could say, of the 5-parter. And it has nothing, it doesn't have a whole lot to do with Tommy, and that's Jason in that pocket dimension with Goldar. It has one of my favorite lines actually from the 5-parter. It's like, now you are demanding, soon you will be begging.
That was actually part 2, by the way.
Yeah, I know. But I said it goes into part 3. And I know you're like, I know you actually kind of criticized me a little bit on the Power Trip, because I said I love the fact that he's using what you would think would just be mood atmosphere, because obviously when they were filming this, they were using a fog machine to create some atmosphere with that, but he used the environment to his advantage, and he hid in it. And then Goldar's walking around. It's a very suspenseful sequence where he's just walking around, just randomly stabbing at the ground, hoping he hits Jason. I actually really appreciated that. And then there's a point where he comes within an inch of Jason's head, and he has to cock his head just slightly to avoid it. And then he just keeps going. And then it ends with with your new favorite meme that I made for you. With angry Jason.
Damn it, Marchand!
Yes, Jimmy, I know. You say it every day to me.
That's where I actually got that from Jimmy, because I overheard Jimmy in the break room one day pouring some coffee, and I guess you had forgot to, refill the creamer, and I heard Jimmy mumbling to himself, "Damn it, Marchand."
Yeah. I admit that when it was my day, because we designated. Everyone gets designated to refill the creamer in the office, and it was my day, and I forgot. I'm sorry. Calm the heck down, man. I didn't realize you didn't like black coffee. Ugh.
I mean, Jimmy's a man's man, but there are just some lines that he won't cross, I guess.
Apparently. Anyway, so what did you think of that? Because it's, like I said, it was a highlight for me.
Oh, it's definitely a highlight. It's very suspenseful, and like, I criticize that scene because I'm looking at it from the practicality standpoint. Like, okay, that fog machine is there for atmosphere, but you can still see the floor. It's not like all Goldar would have to do is go, and there Jason is. Like, that's all he had to do. But okay, so I get it. Like, it's there for atmosphere, it's there for mood, and it's there for suspense. From a storytelling standpoint of it, I liked it. It was great. From a practical effects standpoint, I feel like they could have done something a little bit differently, done something a little bit different that was a little bit more believable, or turned up the fog machine, but that probably would have messed with the footage. So I liked it. My criticisms of it are nitpicky at best.
Yeah.
And I acknowledge that, but I liked it. Like I said, from a storytelling standpoint, I thought that it was really well done to establish the threat level. And I know we're going to talk a lot about establishing the threat level, establishing your villains, and establishing the insurmountable odds that our heroes are facing here.
Yeah.
I know we're going to talk about that, but it's those little moments like that all work in tandem to reinforce the idea that, sometimes things and situations are not as simply resolved as they should be, or as they seem to be.
Well, and that's actually, now that you bring that up, it makes me think that, considering that this would have been, this would have aired, every day for a week. This is, they were airing the show during the week, before school, after school. And so this would have come a few weeks into the show's run. They have established this is the status quo. And then, this miniseries changes the status quo for them.
Oh, in a big way.
Yeah. And it also, now that they've shown us what the Rangers can do, now it's like, let's take some things away from them. Let's take Zordon away, so they have to operate on their own. Oh, Jason is stuck in an arena with Goldar. Oh, he can just morph. Oh, Goldar's like, I have your morpher. So we're going to put Jason at a disadvantage, which then helps to create some suspense. I'm sure the kids watching this are probably freaking out a little bit, because they're like, oh no, how's he going to do this? So it's a very good way of, showing what the characters do and what they need, and then, putting limitations on them. Okay. They can only become the superheroes if they have the transformation devices.
It shows that they're very human at the core. Like, they're superheroes, yes, but they're also human. Like, there's that one line, I think it's in part 3, where Goldar says, no human has ever defeated me. And Jason says, well, I'm going to be the first. And I'm sitting there like, but you've been defeated.
Yeah, there's
by
like
humans.
a dozen or so episodes before this. Did you forget about that?
Like, okay, that's odd. But anyway, But yes, by taking something away from our heroes, by like putting them at a disadvantage, like you said, it does raise that level of urgency. It does raise that level of, oh crap, like our heroes are not going to be able to easily get out of this as they have been prior. And I think, if anything, and I know this is fast forwarding a little bit, but where Green with Evil, it builds to a point and it kind of falls flat at the end.
Oh, really?
Because it kind of falls a little bit flat because, and I know it's a kid's show. I get it. It's a kid's show. You got to kind of work within those parameters. I get that. But it's like the instant forgiveness, the instant, like I have to redeem myself, like that instantaneous thing, like and we will see this later. Tommy wrestles with his actions as the Green Ranger. We'll see this later, but just the instantaneous, like, oh man, like Jason says, oh man, we forgive you. Will you be a Power Ranger now? As soon as it's over. Like for me, I wouldn't trust that guy. I would be like, you're going to set out for a little bit and make sure that this thing is really done for you before you can become a Ranger. But for the sake of like driving the message home of, you overcoming evil, redemption, forgiveness, like driving that message home it was important for the show to kind of end it quickly, not linger there for too long, which, but it could have been just a case of not having enough stock footage or not having, or not wanting to run the risk of replaying the same stock footage to kind of build up to a bigger crescendo moment for this. But it just felt a little bit flat at the end, I thought, but that's just me.
I can kind of understand that. We're kind of jumping ahead a little bit because we'll have a nice little thematic discussion, I think, after we go through all of this, but I can see what you mean by that. It might have seemed a little bit rushed, but I think it's also the conventions of the time.
It was like this is a very episodic show. I think we talked about, I can't remember what episode of the Power Trip it was, but we talked about how shows in the 90s and even in the early 2000s were very episodic as opposed to serialized as they are now. So for them to do something like this was a big deal because you didn't see stuff like this on television all that, especially in a kid's show. You may have seen it in other franchises, but in a kid's show, doing something doing a story arc that builds and builds and builds upon each other, that was a big deal. I feel like for a show in
doing 5-part miniseries like this as part of the show was something that was being done in the 80s with G.I. Joe, Transformers, and things like that. But it wasn't necessarily something that was attempted often, and I'm a little surprised because you're definitely incentivizing your audience to watch every day of the week.
Yeah.
To see what happens. That's
for sure.
I remember those times. I remember the 3 words that were the bane of my existence as a kid were "to be continued" because I'm like, oh man, I have to wait till tomorrow. Am I going to be able to watch tomorrow?
Or is mom going to make me do so, or I got to go somewhere? I don't know. I don't even remember if I was able to catch all of this every single day in the 90s, honestly. Like, I don't know. Like, I remember coming home from school and watching Power Rangers. It would come on every day at the same time, 3:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time after school. And then on Saturday mornings, they would play at like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So, yeah.
Yeah. But since we're talking about, the first and all of that, like I said, it introduced us to Tommy Oliver. It also introduced us to Jason David Frank, the actor who plays him, who has been nothing but a friend of this franchise ever since. And hilariously, despite the fact that they try very hard, especially at the beginning of this miniseries, to present Jason and Tommy as equals, let's be honest. We know Jason David Frank is the better martial artist here. If he wanted to, if it wasn't for the script, he would probably take out what was the what was the actor's name again for
Austin St. John?
You would take Austin St. John out. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there are the caliber of actor. Well, I won't say the caliber of actor because there are still like some very cheesy. I wouldn't say that Jason David Frank is a great actor, but he is a great performer.
Yes,
he is a great performer. Like he does all of his own stunts from what I can recall, from what I've read in the Power Bible.
Yeah. The Power Rangers visual guide, as you put it.
The Power Rangers visual guide, aka the Power Bible.
Yeah,
he did most of, if not all of his own stunts because he wanted that sense of realism. And really interestingly enough, there's only like one little excerpt about Green with Evil in that entire book. Although, you know, they're trying to encompass everything about that first season of Mighty Morphin into like a single chapter. It's like the first chapter of that book is like 20 or 30 pages because they're trying to encompass everything about Mighty Morphin into those pages. So if they did everything, if they explored everything that Green with Evil had to offer, that book would probably be like 500 pages. And it's not. So I just found it really interesting that I don't know if I should read you can cut this out, but should I read the excerpt?
Go for it.
I just found this little excerpt from Jason David Frank in the book kind of interesting. And it says, Jason David Frank, who plays Tommy Oliver, is easily identified with the character he plays on the show. Quote, Tommy Oliver was a lot like me, he explains. We both did martial arts, loved life, and wanted to get along with everyone. Frank felt that children could understand his character's challenges as a new kid in town, which, you know, we'll get into that in a little bit. And then Jason David Frank says, he was something of a loner, and then he became a leader to his and my own surprise. So, you know, this kind of gives us a glimpse into maybe Frank's personal life where he was, I think if I'm not mistaken, Frank may be an army brat. If I haven't dug really into his biography, but
well, there's something for you to look up, Jimmy.
Yeah, so I want to make sure I'm correct. So I'm not going to go super deep here, but if I'm recalling correctly, Frank was an army brat, so he moved around a lot as a kid. So playing a character like Tommy Oliver, who seemingly has moved around a lot, which is kind of expanded upon in a comic that we'll talk about later. He moves around a lot, and he finds himself in Angel Grove. He finds himself being the new kid in town, and you know. I personally have never had to experience that. I haven't moved around a lot I didn't move around a lot as a kid, but I can understand where he's coming from because I was friends with kids who moved from, say, like out of state or something like that. And it is difficult. It would be difficult for anyone, like trying to reestablish themselves in a new community around with new people and try to make new friends. And I feel like that's something that kids at that time were dealing with that was super important.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, by bringing him on, I think the fight choreography in the Saban footage really stepped up in this.
It did. Yeah, it did. Now, I would say that Austin St. John is no slouch himself.
Oh, no, certainly not.
Like, none of them are slouches. Like, now, none of them, not all of them, you know, had a working knowledge of martial arts prior to the show. There were a few of them that had to learn it because of the show. I think Amy Jo Johnson was one of them. And maybe even David Yost, who plays Billy, had to learn martial arts after starting the show.
David Yost, the buffest nerd ever.
Right. Right. But, you know, there were a couple of actors, Tui Trang, Walter, I cannot ever remember.
Walter Jones.
Walter Jones, thank you. They all had a background in martial arts prior to being in the show, and it shows. Like Zach seems to be a very talented and capable martial artist as well. Like I said, Austin St. John, who plays Jason, is no slouch himself, but Tommy is on Jason David Frank rather is on another level as far as his martial arts skills, and that shows in the footage used for this 5-parter and throughout the series. You know, even in later series where his skills obviously progress to be better. Like, Jason David Frank is a very talented stunt actor. We'll say that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you know if that was him in the Green Ranger costume in the Saban footage?
Yes, I think I'm 90% certain that is him playing the Green Ranger. I know that he played Tommy the White Ranger. I know that was him as the White Ranger doing a lot of those stunts in season 2, but I want to say yes, but I'm only 90% certain of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because there are certain scenes like when he's in the dark dimension and he's practicing, it looks like the same when he's doing some of the moves that he did before. It's like that does look like how we saw him moving in the previous scene. So yes. I'm kind of assuming that was also him in the costume.
I would assume that scenes like that, yes, I would assume that that's the case. But for like fight choreography and things like that, maybe they use the stunt actor a couple of times, because there is, Jason David Frank is not a small guy. He's a little bit. Him and Austin St. John are very bulky. They're very bulky guys. They're very muscular men, and you can tell the difference between maybe them versus like a stunt actor who would be a little bit smaller.
Yeah, or the Sentai footage where the Rangers definitely look a little smaller, which actually becomes a little evident in this, because I think this is one of the first times where the Zhu Ranger costumes were sent to Saban for them to film new footage. Because we do see some Saban footage of the other Rangers, and the Red Ranger definitely looks a little bigger.
Let me tell you, that Red Ranger costume is a little tight on that actor. We'll say that. And don't get me started on the hard taco versus soft taco debate.
Oh, I was going to bring that up because this is a little infamous for those who don't know. The Dragon Shield, which is this kind of a breastplate that is famously on the Green Ranger. The first time we see Tommy as the Green Ranger, it's actually in Saban footage, not in Sentai footage. Although if you look really carefully, when Rita is, when they're dubbing over Bandora from Zhu Ranger, she's supposed to be casting a spell, and they basically do it like one of those bad lip reading videos on YouTube where she's just saying a bunch of nonsense, and it's supposed to be magic words. And it's supposed to be Tommy rising from this table while she's performing some sort of occultic ritual. It's like, that's Sentai footage. That's not him. You pay attention to the silhouette. That's not him.
Yeah.
But the first time we see him with this dramatic reveal with green smoke and everything, basically, from what I understand happened, we talked about this in the Power Trip, because this continues on throughout the Green Ranger's appearances in Power Rangers in all 3 seasons. The Dragon Shield that was used in the Sentai footage actually looks very nice, very form-fitting. It's made out of what I'm guessing was probably high-caliber rubber. Looks very nice. I'm guessing it was damaged either in transit. I swear I read somewhere it was either damaged in transit to California. It was damaged when they were filming Zhu Ranger.
It wasn't damaged. It was lost.
It was lost. Okay.
It was lost. It was lost in transit. So. Okay. Someone stole the Dragon Shield.
Those jerks. So Saban decided, well, we need it, so let's make a new one. And they made it out of fabric, and it looks terrible. It looks really flimsy, and it's a little too big compared to the Saban to the Sentai footage. It's so bad that it kind of takes you out of it a little bit. When you're a little kid, I'm sure you probably don't notice, but when you're a more discerning adult, you're just like, oh, good Lord. Yeah, it does. It obviously takes you out of it a little bit, and I make the joke of hard taco versus soft taco. Yeah, we stole that from a Twitter meme. Was it a Twitter? Yeah. I can't remember if it was Ranger Power Hour, not Ranger Power Hour. No, it was the Power Ranger Hype Twitter account that said, "Oh, that's right. Do you Power like Ranger your taco soft or hard?" Yeah. So yeah, it's just I don't know. It's just a weird little thing that you don't, like you said, as a kid in the 90s, you probably didn't care or you didn't notice, like, oh, there's the Ranger with the Dragon Shield, whatever. But as an adult, kind of taking a look at these with a more critical eye, it doesn't look great. Yeah. And it should be mentioned, we should have mentioned this earlier, that another character who really gets to shine a little bit more this time around is Alpha.
Oh yeah,
he
Alpha,
gets messed with. He gets messed with a couple of times in the most '90s way possible, which is you corrupt a robot with a CD-ROM. So
with a CD-ROM containing a virus. But what I really liked about this five-parter is that Alpha essentially takes the reins as the mentor character from Zordon, because Zordon's not there for this.
Yeah.
And even in that last episode, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't write it down, but in that last episode, I think even Zordon said he even thanks Alpha for Alpha's leadership.
Commends him.
Yes. Yeah, he commends him for his leadership. And that's something you don't get to see very often from Alpha, because Alpha's just the hands and feet of Zordon. He is just there to, be a physical thing that can interact with the Rangers in place of, Zordon not being able to. So I was really happy that Alpha got some time to shine, we'll say, in this.
Oh, for sure. You know what's another thing that got introduced in this?
What's that?
A popular villain who, weirdly enough, only made sporadic appearances, Scorpina.
Be horny.
Horny in one way here, horny in a different way in the audio drama.
She's the horniest character in this. I feel like she's the horniest villain in this series. Yeah.
Calm down, Jimmy. Calm down.
Yes, we get introduced to our true femme fatale of the Ranger franchise, Miss Scorpina, aka Lami from Zyuranger.
And I wish I knew that actress's name, because I will admit, she is a fine woman.
Oh, she is gorgeous. She is absolutely gorgeous.
Scorpina is very different from her Sentai counterpart.
Yeah, I mean, even
Scorpina's a little more one note in Power Rangers, whereas Lami is actually, quote unquote, Goldar's wife. By Goldar, I mean Grifferzor.
Yeah,
they're married, and she is weirdly affectionate and kind of nice to him. You get shades of it here, but
a little.
They edit out all of those bits, which is too bad, because I would have thought that Scorpina and Goldar being married would have been an interesting thing to keep.
You see a little bit of it in the scene where they're standing together and they're drinking wine and they're celebrating because she has her hand on Goldar's chest.
Yeah,
and that's a very affectionate. That's a sign of affection.
Yeah,
and you see a little bit of that, but I'm with you. I think I would have liked to have seen some of that more relational dynamic between the two, but I'd be afraid that would make our villains likable. And in the 90s, you can't make your children's villains likable.
Yeah, we're not going to do that right now in Power Rangers.
Right.
We got to wait a few more seasons before we get that.
You got to wait at least 5 seasons, to be exact, before your villains become likable.
Yes, and I'm going to contain myself. So we have that episode of the Power Trip is coming up very soon.
I'm just going to say this. Divatox is one of the most likable characters in the Power Rangers canon.
I agree with you, Jimmy. Fake news.
Oh, Jimmy, you and I were having a conversation in the break room today about how much you admire Divatox's talents as well.
Yeah,
and you guys call me the dude, bro. Come on, Jimmy. That's not very PC of you.
Certainly. We may have to have Jet censor you there a little bit, Jimmy. A little hot under the collar there. Plus, I've lost a little respect for you. Divatox? Really? Anyway, anyone who doesn't follow Power Rangers is terribly confused right now. So, but no. So we get so Scorpina is in here. She is a little bit different compared to the other villains, because when Rita pulls her "make my monster grow" thing, she doesn't just get huge; she gets ugly.
She gets really ugly
and kind of terrifying, to be honest.
Oh, she's extremely terrifying. No, she's extremely terrifying. And I don't know if it's obviously never explained in Power Rangers why she literally transformed when she's small, she's human and she's beautiful and she's very like feminine and things. But when she grows, she turns into a literal like scorpion creature. And I'm not 100% sure why that was the case. It's really never explained, even in the Sentai.
I was going to say, you've seen more Zyuranger than I have.
It's never really explained in the Sentai. I can venture to guess that it's just because, big scary creature is more terrifying than sexy woman who also happens to be big.
I mean, this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit to a thematic discussion that we're going to have, but it could be kind of one of those things where evil can look alluring and charming, and then once the mask comes off, you realize just how ugly it really is.
Oh, we're going to talk about the mask. I got a bunch of notes on masking evil, but we'll get there.
Yeah. I'm just saying. I don't want to get too crazy about it, but I wouldn't be surprised because let's be honest. Yeah, you're right. A giant, hot babe is not necessarily going to be nearly as scary as a scorpion creature that wants to rip your face off or stab you in the chest if you're the Megazord. But the other thing that we've already talked about it a little bit, your transport here, we are introduced to the Dragon Sword, and I will admit, little Nate, when he would watch this, would be like, Mechagodzilla. It's Mechagodzilla.
Is that a euphemism? Is that a euphemism? Little Nate?
Yeah, when I was little Nate, that just sounds weird if it's in that context as a euphemism. Anyway, so it's the Dragon Sword. The Dragon Sword. It's basically Mechagodzilla. So
basically, yes.
It's Mechagodzilla with a drill on the. I have to say, the Megazord is iconic,
right?
But let's be honest, the Dragon Sword might be the coolest Zord in Mighty Morphin.
Well, actually, I prefer, I love I love the OG Megazord. The OG Megazord is the icon. It is the one that people for the most part love, or they love to hate on it because it is so saturated within, Ranger canon and lore and things. Like there's always something to do. Like there's whether it's a toy or a comic or whatever, they're always going to start with the Megazord because that just makes sense. But my favorite Megazord combination, actually from Zyuranger and from the original Mighty Morphin, is actually Dragon Zord in battle mode, where it has the
also see in this.
Yeah, it has the Triceratops and Saber-tooth tiger feet, the Mastodon arms, but the body of the Dragon Zord comes together to form this big gold shield on its chest that emblemizes or resembles the emblem of the dragon, the 6 Ranger coin, the dragon coin, and it just looks cool. Like, it just looks cool. Like, I want that. Like, I want something like that sitting on my shelf. I have enough Megazords. I have like 6 different Megazords on my shelf right now. I need a Dragon Zord in battle mode. Super 7, someone, give me that. Give me that.
Sure, someone will hear you about it. But the other thing that makes it so cool is how Tommy summons it. I mean, you've brought your own little version of it with you today. That dragon dagger doubles as a flute, and there is just something weirdly mythic about a weapon that can be used as a musical instrument to summon a monster of some kind.
Well, it's very, and we were talking about this before we started recording. It's very like fairy tale like.
Yes.
It's very it's like very like, I don't know, like Pied Piper, like would Pied Piper be like a really fair comparison to make? I don't know.
Yeah. But there's the magic flute. There's an instance where there's a flute that can command animals.
Yeah. And there's
magic flute, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, is an opera. It's a Wagnerian opera.
You and I have talked about this.
It's Mozart.
You and I have talked about this as I waved my dagger at you.
There's another euphemism for you.
Anyway, as I swing my dagger, wait, no, that's not right either. As I thrust my dagger upon, no, that's not right either. As I wag my dagger, no, can't go there either. as I point,
I think that's Jimmy's way of saying, stop it.
Stop it. Okay. But you and I have talked about this. You and I have talked about there is just something incredibly cool about commanding a Zord or a mythical beast, because that's what these creatures are. In Zyuranger, they are mythical beasts. Mm-hmm. There's just something really cool about that, like commanding a beast like the Dragon Zord with a flute shaped like a sword or shaped like a dagger. Like that just feels very mythic. It's very, I don't know, it's not Arthurian mythic, but it's very like fairy tale, not Final Fantasy, but like fantasy, sword and sandal kind of stuff. Like it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's honestly, I think one of the things that helped solidify the Dragon Zord and Tommy and basically Mighty Morphin Season 1 as an icon, because there really wasn't anything quite like that from after this season.
No, like we've had some really cool weapons, and I would say that like even the Sword of Darkness is a really cool weapon. Like it looks great. Mm-hmm. We see the Sword of Darkness pop up like a couple more times after this. But I really wish that they would have been able to do something with that outside of this 5-parter. But I understand why it had to go away, because the whole concept is that it's the Sword of Darkness that keeps Tommy under control, which is really interesting, because you would think that it would be the dragon coin, like the corrupted dragon coin, that would keep Tommy under control. But it's actually the sword that she uses to keep Tommy under control.
Well, you know why they had to do that? Because they were going to keep him around, so they can't just destroy the coin.
Right.
So they had to tie it to something else. Although, I mean, we see some other pretty crazy stuff in this. We talked about it on the power trip, but I would have to say, out of these 5 episodes, I mean, there's some really great stuff in all of them, but I might have to go with part 4 as my favorite of the 5. Part 5 is a very close second because of Dragon Zord, because that's when Dragon Zord shows up, but Part 4 is the wildest.
Part 4 gets crazy. Part 4 is eclipsing the Megazord.
Yeah, which has Bulk and Skull, the resident bullies who are in a bus, and then they're using them as leverage because they're in the bus, and then we have this bit where they're trying to catch the bus, and then they catch the bus and put it down, so there's some good miniature work there in the Sentai footage, and and there's some suspense as well as they're about to push it over. We get some Saban footage of the costumes with stunt actors who are definitely underacting compared to the Sentai actors.
I would venture to guess that part 4, although it's one of the most impactful episodes although it's one of the most important ones, because again we see the destruction of the destruction in scare quotes of the Megazord. Part 4 felt like more of a like return to formula type episode,
a little bit, kind of back to the Monster of the Week thing. But the reason I cite it is because as my favorite because it's wild is that Giant Tommy.
I mean, we've already established that Tommy is a grower, not a shower, with the Power Trip podcast. So, yeah, I mean, Giant Tommy is
just the fact that Rita used the monster growing wand on Tommy. So we have Giant Tommy fighting the Megazord. Mm-hmm. With Goldar and Monster Scorpina is just wild for me to think about, because that it never happened again. Not like that anyway.
It just makes me wonder why Toei didn't do like giant putties or something else with that, like that, or even just leave Scorpina in her human form, leave Scorpina in her human form, make her bigger, and she's still just as terrifying. But I don't know. Maybe the giant scorpion creature would be a lot more terrifying, I think. But
yeah, but still, it's just wild because it's going back to the formula, but it's it's kind of a left field version of the formula, let's be honest.
Yeah, because one of the memes we made for our episode on Mighty Morphin was it's Tommy coming out of the mist saying, "Fine, I'll do it myself."
Yeah, basically. Which is a good reveal, too, where he's coming out of the fog.
Oh, it's shot beautifully.
Yeah, and he's gigantic. I was just like, oh my gosh. So it's a giant ranger, which, like I said, just almost never happens. But then part 5, we get the dragon sword and all is right with the world, and it stomps around and eats a smokestack, which is just kind of funny.
I actually forgot that we didn't get the dragon sword until part 5, which I honest to God thought we got dragon sword earlier than this. I thought we got dragon sword in part 4, but
no, because we had Giant Tommy. Why we have Giant Tommy? Why do you need the dragon sword?
I was remembering the timeline incorrectly.
Yes. It's also part 4 is also one of the rare times that we have, at least in Mighty Morphin, we have an episode set at night. They didn't do night episodes very often, or at least in the dark, because it was an eclipse. Because the Megazord is apparently solar powered, and no one told us until then.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I always thought that the Megazord was powered by the Morphin grid, which is not reliant on solar powers. But okay, whatever. It's a plot convenience.
Well, and it's tying it because I've seen that much of Zhu Ranger, and it's tapping into Zhu Ranger because they were using the Zhu Ranger footage because the quote unquote Megazord in there was solar powered.
Right. Yeah.
Or at least it needed energy from the sun because
one
of the big differences is that, as you hinted at it, is that in Zhu Ranger, the Zords are actually living beings.
Yeah, because in Zhu Ranger, Daijujin, which is robot god Daijujin is what he's called in Zhu Ranger, draws his power from the earth and from its elements. So being powered by the sun makes a whole lot of sense. And like you just said, the dinosaurs are actual living sentient beings, and they're not just giant robots.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's they were utilizing it, but yeah, hey, it worked as a good way to set up. We were talking about the stakes and the gravity of the situation. It really did help to play into that because this is the biggest challenge that our heroes have faced so far in this show.
Yeah. And, later Ranger seasons have tried to replicate what is done here. And I would say, without sounding like a huge fanboy, which I am, I fully admit that. I'm fully comfortable in admitting that I am a fanboy of this whole thing. But
the first step towards solving a problem is admitting you have it. Got it.
Right. Exactly. I say the same thing about my buying habits. But anyway,
yeah, like fancy blue Ghidorahs. I get it.
But that was actually a gift, sir. I didn't buy that myself. That was a gift from the board. Anyway, but this whole formula has been attempted to be replicated with very moderate success, but it doesn't reach the same levels as this did.
No, the franchise has tried to recapture this magic in later series, but it never quite gets there. I would say the most obvious example, without getting too far into the weeds about this, would be something like Lightspeed Rescue with the Titanium Ranger. It tries, but it doesn't quite get there. It actually had the potential to go to top Green with Evil if they wanted to, but they didn't quite get there.
They didn't go far enough with it.
Yeah, they didn't go far enough with it. Then something like Time Force did an interesting spin on it where the 6th Ranger is not a villain. He's more of an anti-hero, but he is antagonistic toward the Rangers.
Right.
It's not, that one wasn't so much going for recapturing the magic so much as it was doing a different spin on the concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but just other seasons have tried this, and it just doesn't reach the same level of gravitas as this 5-parter did. Yeah. Because this 5-parter is very weighty. There's a lot of stakes. And I said this at the top of the show, where if you want to establish the threat level, you have them invade the command center. You have your villain take away something from your heroes to put them at a disadvantage.
Because the command center was their sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
It was their safe place where they could gather, figure out what to do, and go do it.
Right.
And he just comes right in and says, this is no longer safe. You don't get a refuge this time. There is no refuge from me.
There is no refuge because not only does he invade the command center, but he also invades the Megazord, which we learned the reason why he can get into the Megazord is because he has a power coin. Like you have access to that's the whole thing here. Like he has access to the same things the Rangers do because he has a power coin too.
Yeah.
So that really establishes the threat level because to some degree, he is just like they are, but just working for the wrong side.
Yeah, for sure. Which, that's as good a time as any to get into a little bit of a thematic discussion. I think we'll wrap up by talking about this miniseries legacy, at least a little bit. So we talked a bit about this on the Power Trip, but one of the things that I actually find fascinating, and one of the things that we try to hammer home on the Power Trip is that there's more to Power Rangers than I think a lot of people are willing to admit. And they tend to write Power Rangers off as just silly, disposable, campy children's entertainment from the 90s. Well, if that was the case, I don't imagine that people would still be talking about Power Rangers to this day, because there's plenty of 90s children's shows that have been lost in the ether, even if they were popular at the time.
Care Bears.
Well, some people still talk about Care Bears, but
yeah, I mean,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's an example of something that hasn't necessarily had like the stay power as something that Power Rangers has done. And what like you said, what we've tried to do with the Power Trip, or what I'm doing with the article series for Kaijurama magazine, is I'm trying to show that there is a level of depth here. That if you sometimes you have to dig. I fully acknowledge you have to dig and try to connect those dots yourself. It's not always obvious, but there is depth there. There is something there to latch onto.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I did, and I even joked about it on social media, is like, you want to know what kind of a podcast MIFV is? MIFV is the kind of podcast that quotes St. Augustine and J.R.R. Tolkien when talking about Power Rangers. And you're about to get that now, because you and I were talking about this, and we think one of the central themes of this miniseries is the nature of evil, which does also tie into things like redemption. Heck, I put together a nerd and geek devotional book that had an entry, not written by me, but written by a writer friend of mine, about Tommy, that was about redemption and this 5-part miniseries.
Yeah, this miniseries also, to bring it a little bit closer to home, this also kind of questions what it really means to be a Power Ranger. Mm-hmm. The example that I'm about to give, I think it comes in part 3, The Rescue, where it's the confrontation between Tommy and Jason in the dark dimension. And Jason says to Tommy, if you're truly a Ranger, you'd be on Zordon's side, not Rita's. Mm-hmm. So was he truly, and this is an argument that I've had with other people about, I think it falls into like Christian apologetics, where we were having a discussion about free will and things of that nature. And they brought up the point of, oh, you're really not a Christian if you're still doing bad things. Like if you're still doing these things, you were never, the argument that I always get into, and I'm not going to name names, but he's a very good friend of mine, but we always get into this argument of, if you're still questioning God, if you're still questioning things like, good versus evil, were you really ever a Christian to begin with? Yeah. Like, were you ever saved? Like to use church terminology, you ever? Yeah,
you might want to keep that guy away from Reverend Mifune. He would have choice words.
I'm sure.
The chaplain here on Monster Island. Especially since Reverend Mifune has a katana on his hip at all times. So
right. So, my friend and I have gotten into some heated arguments where I wanted to whip out my katana on him, but no, that sounds way worse. Sounds way worse than it was intended to.
I think Jimmy is once again giving you his subtle little signal to cool it.
There are so many jokes on this podcast today.
Thanks, Jet. I needed some censorship there.
But it really does. Like, this 5-parter questions kind of what it really means to be a ranger. But as we're about ready to talk about, sometimes, even though evil can corrupt you, there's always like that level of redemption. There's always that redemption story.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I was thinking about this. And weirdly enough, this concept is actually, it's a little serendipitous. Maybe it's good that you got bribed by the board and this episode was postponed until now, because this concept has actually been getting memed really hard on the internet, because Lord of the Rings fans are not too happy about the new Amazon show that just had a trailer drop. And they've been talking about this idea, and I was aware of this as a fan of Tolkien myself, J.R.R. Tolkien. This concept is very much indicative of his work, and I thought that there was some place where he articulated this, but I actually didn't find it articulated exactly like this. But this is derived from an excerpt from Lord of the Rings where it's Frodo speaking, and I'll share that with you in a second. But Tolkien was a very devout Catholic man. And so one concept that you see throughout his work is the idea of what is the nature of evil. And his argument was that, to put it succinctly, evil by its nature can't create, it can only corrupt or destroy what was originally good. And since God created, in his worldview, if God created everything and God created everything good, then what we deem evil was not created evil, it was made evil. It was not how God intended it. So, as an article I looked at put it, he said, it goes, quote, Tolkien treats evil as a privation of the good in a manner corresponding to the well-known doctrine of St. Augustine and Boethius, as well as countless others in that tradition. So, remember how I said I'd be talking about, I'd be quoting St. Augustine? Well, that's coming up here in a second. But to give a little bit of background, St. Augustine, who was a medieval theologian, originally came from what was considered a heretical doctrine that actually sounds a little bit like dualism. I don't know if you've ever heard the term dualism, Michael.
I have, but for the uninitiated, Nate, what does dualism mean?
Well, the idea that, at least when it comes to the ideas of good and evil, that, because this is what this doctrine believed. It was, let me look up the name here really quick, Manichaeism? I hope I said that right. But it basically, to put it succinctly, it believed that good and evil were always 50-50, and each one was always trying to gain an advantage over the other. But it was always basically a flip of the coin to see if either good or evil would triumph at any point. So that he came out of that tradition and then St. Augustine came out of that tradition and moved into another one. And then I found this interesting little quotation here, which is from his Confessions. That's one of his books, where he espouses an idea that is very much, I think, indicative of Tolkien, was a big influence on him, and I think has application as weird as it sounds, in this 5-parter. Quote, it was obvious to me that things which are liable to corruption are good. If they were the supreme goods, or if they were not good at all, they could not be corrupted. For if they were supreme goods, they would be incorruptible. If there were no good in them, there would be nothing capable of being corrupted. Corruption does not harm, and unless it diminishes the good, no harm is done. Therefore, either corruption does not harm, which cannot be the case, or, which is wholly certain, all things that are corrupted suffer privation of some good. If they were to be deprived of all good, they would not exist at all. End quote. Which gets extrapolated in this article to basically say that this concept basically means evil is nothing. Evil is basically nothingness. That's why evil is very nihilistic if you stop and think about it, because it's removing the good, and everything was, in Tolkien's view, was created good. And that's why I think this 5-parter is actually really harrowing at points, because we're introduced to Tommy, and he's a good kid. He's a very good kid. I wish we had seen a little bit more of him, but we'll talk about that because there's some expanded universe material that gives us a little bit more about Tommy.
A little bit, yeah.
And we're not entirely sure if it's canon or not. The Ranger Wiki treats it like it's canon.
Yeah, it's just so out, but it's so, we'll get there, but it's just so out there in some spots that it's almost hard for me to take it as official canon.
Yeah. But if you take that story, it's a comic book, it's called Going Green. If you take that into account, because there's a few lines here that give this impression. Rita does not make that power coin. She finds it and then finds someone to use it.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely in her possession.
Yeah.
And even Zordon, because even Zordon says, I think it is an issue, or not issue. It is in episode 5 or part 5 where he says, "Oh, Rita I'm paraphrasing. Oh, Rita finally found someone to give the coin to."
Yes.
So this coin has been in her possession this whole time for God knows how long, ever since a certain battle with some radishes, I guess.
King Rutabaga.
Which I had never read. You and I were talking about this the other evening. We're like, oh crap, we're gonna have to buy this issue now, and it's hard to find a new fresh copy. But turns out it's a part of an archive series put out by Boom from a couple of years ago, and I read that, and I was like, okay, so this is incredibly silly. Is this trying to be a parody mixed in with some lore, or what's going on here? Or are they just leaning into the camp? We don't have to go into detail, like full detail of that whole issue, but the big point in that issue that it's trying to make is apparently Rita gains or is given or finds the power coin She finds the power coin after doing battle with
King Rutabaga.
King Rutabaga. I can't even say it with a straight face. King Rutabaga. Jeez, there we go. And his army, and apparently the coin is nestled in a statue of Ninjor. It's kept inside of a statue of Ninjor, which we know as part of Ranger canon, Ninjor is the creator of the power coins. So he still had the statue, still possesses the Green Ranger coin. So she finds the Green Ranger coin, and then she discovers Tommy. The way the story goes, she sends a monster down to Earth,
who interestingly is named Corruptor with a K.
Right. So Tommy is just kind of minding his own business. He intercepts the creature and fights it, and she's like, "Oh, this random human has some skills." And so she's like, "He will make a good Green Ranger." And then she greets the big difference between
super flirty and everything with him too.
Right. It's really creepy. It's like she wants him to call, what is it? She wants him to call her Mama Rita.
Mommy Repulsa.
Mommy Repulsa. Okay. All right. That's all right. So, whoever wrote that comic has got mommy issues. I can tell you that. So if we're this is what it kind of rewrites the show in a way, because in the show, it is implied that the moment that Rita corrupts Tommy, that is the first time they meet each other. But in the comic, they actually meet each other prior, and she's doing like that. What's the scene from the Bible where the devil is trying to convince
the temptation in the wilderness.
The temptation in the wilderness. Thank you. It's sort of like the story of the temptation in the wilderness, where she's having this conversation with Tommy, trying to convince him, and Tommy's not having any of it. But in the show, it's kind of implied that this is the first time they meet each other. But in the comic, it kind of rewrites that a little bit.
Yeah,
that's what
I can see that, but it also does make a little bit more sense because we don't know why she picked Tommy. Or where she got the coin. So I'm glad that they at least expanded on that. We can debate the canonicity of it. I understand. But.
No, that's fine. And which brings me to something in my notes here where I said it was in episode, or it was in, I keep saying episode, but it was in part 2 where she sends down the putties to fight Tommy as a test so that he can possess the Sword of Darkness. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so he's already fought the putties, and these are not the super putties that we see later. These are just regular run-of-the-mill putties. So it's kind of like she should have just gave him the darn sword, maybe? I don't know. Like, that just sounds...
They needed an action sequence.
They needed an action sequence.
They needed an action sequence where a very unfortunate putty could get a face full of Tommy Oliver crotch for that Hurricane Rana.
Right. So...
And that putty just has a face that just says, oh, crap.
I don't know, but my point is that is a good thing that I think that comic did was, Tommy just happens to be there at the right place, right time to fight this monster that had just got sent down to Earth. And Rita saw that as a test or as an inadvertent test to say, oh, this kid is special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so she takes him and she, in again, very fairy tale sort of fashion, she casts a spell upon him to make him act differently, to make him pliable. Put him under her spell. And he still, this is the interesting thing, even after it's lifted, he still wants to blame himself for what happened. Maybe he got over it a little too quickly, and maybe the rest of the Rangers were a little too quick to forgive, but he still wanted to blame himself for what happened. And so he was still taking responsibility. He wasn't just using it as an excuse. It wasn't me. And he admits, it's like, I still did it. And and that's what makes it harrowing because, like I said, we established quickly Tommy's a good kid. And to see Rita just come in and through her dark powers bend him to her will and use him as a tool, it's disgusting, kind of. Actually, it's not just kind of disgusting. It is disgusting.
It's the nature of evil where, evil can take something as beautiful as a human life and corrupt it and twist it to the point where it's almost unrecognizable. And, when and I wrote this in my notes, something to the effect of, I'm trying to find it here, but it was something to the effect of, evil, you can mask evil. You can put a mask over evil, but eventually that evil is going to come through.
Mm-hmm. Which is something that they do in this. And I know we talked about this in the Power Trip where I said, would this have been improved if they had let Tommy be a little bit subtler with the change? But then when I watched it again for this, I realized, well, he's the new kid, so they don't really know what he's like.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you can get away with it a little bit more, but it would have been a little interesting if they had let the change be a bit more subtle, or if they had kept Tommy's identity as the Green Ranger secret until part 4. I played around with it, but
to be fair, when we first get introduced to Tommy, well, I take it back. It's not just when we first get introduced to Tommy. It's a little bit later when he's runs off Bulk and Skull away from Kim. And he has this kind of this calm, respectful, very sweet demeanor about him. But then, he just changes. Like the progression I feel like the progression is like night and day from the time from when we see him in the hallway at school to after Rita till after Rita corrupts him, because he becomes kind of a recluse, very cold. He keeps to him, like he's not as like warm and as friendly as he was.
But admittedly, in part 4, when Kim, was it part 4? No, I think it was in part 5. But when which was actually one of your awards on the Power Trip, where Kim confronts him and says like, "Hey, we know you're the Green Ranger," and then he's like, "Well, guess what? Rita's gonna win, and you're all gonna die." He drops all pretense.
Yeah, that was part 5, because we see that Tommy's the big reveal is made at the very end of part 4, and then it's expanded, and then it's more explored in part 5. So it was part 5.
Yeah. And so when you talk about unmasking evil, at that point he's like, "Well, no pretense anymore. So guess what? There you go." And specific.
I'm wondering though, because I'm sitting here thinking, is that because does he drop all pretense because of hubris or because out of desperation? Or what is it at this point? Like, because I think we can become so confident in our, like, I feel like, villains or not just villains, but just people who are just genuinely evil.
Yeah.
When they get so confident in their evilness or in the thing that's corrupting them, they just drop the mask entirely.
Yeah.
Whereas
Basically
they put the mask on to hide sort of an insecurity. Like, well, maybe this is not necessarily the right thing to do. Maybe I'm not a true believer here in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's a level of confidence where it's like, oh, there's nothing you could do about it. I don't need to lie to you anymore. It's too late. It's too late for you. Well, spoiler warning, Tommy. Did you forget what show you were in? But no, this whole concept that what people are latching onto, I thought it was from an essay. It's not. It's actually from a passage in Lord of the Rings. It comes from Frodo. Him and Sam are talking about how, despite the fact that the orcs are evil and cruel, they have these weird moments of kindness when they were holding them captive. So this is from Return of the King, which is book 3 of the trilogy. And Frodo tells Sam, quote, "No, they eat and drink, Sam. The shadow that bred them can only mock, it cannot make. Not real new things of its own. I don't think it gave life to the orcs. It only ruined them and twisted them. And if they are to live at all, they have to live like other living creatures. Foul waters and foul meats they'll take, if they can get no better, but not poison," because Sam thought that the orcs lived by eating poison. "They've fed me, and I'm no better off than you. There must be food and water somewhere in this place." End quote. So again, it goes back to the idea that which is evil was something that was good that was later corrupted. And in this idea is like, there's still at least some little vestiges of goodness left in there. And we talked a bit about this on the Power Trip, where even some of these horribly villainous characters in, especially the early seasons of Power Rangers, we still see little glimmers of goodness in them. Rita and Lord Zed genuinely love each other, which is so bizarre, know, and little things like that. So yeah, so I think that this is definitely playing into it. That's why it's so harrowing to watch, because we're seeing Tommy turned into nothing. Basically, the goodness is taken from him, and then so he's just this empty, I guess in a way, an empty vessel, this pawn that Rita is using to accomplish her goals, and she very nearly does. Let's be honest. Tommy comes probably the closest out of anybody in Mighty Morphin for a very long time to actually defeating the Rangers.
I want to park just for a minute on something that you just said about the fact that evil cannot create something. It can only corrupt something that is already in existence, which that kind of makes me think, okay, so everything is inherently good, but it only becomes evil when we allow it to be corrupted, or when we allow corruption to seep in.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting, and we're running a little long, so I'm going to have to kind of summarize this as best I can. But Tolkien famously wrote an essay called On Fairy Stories that delved into a lot of things like this. I want to bring a few of the points that he made in that. He talked about a lot of things in this essay, but I think this is something that's applicable because we're talking about these things in, it's a children's show. It's very fairy tale-like. And he, in a large portion of this essay, made a huge defense of stories like this and how it's presumptive for adults to write stuff off like fairy tales as being childish. And he talked about having a quote unquote willing suspension of disbelief, and like he said right here, the suspension of disbelief may thus be somewhat tired, shabby, or sentimental state of mind, and so lean to the adult. I fancy it often the state of adults in the presence of a fairy story. They are held there and supported by sentiment, memories of childhood, notions of what childhood ought to be like. they think they ought to be like the tale, that if they really liked it or itself, they would not have to suspend disbelief. They would believe in this sense. Sounds a bit like nostalgia, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but he talked about how worlds like that are very appealing for children, even if they are filled with danger, because it's so much more interesting. And let's be honest, a kid's watching Power Rangers like, that looks exciting. There's monsters attacking every week, but it looks exciting.
Yeah, what I really liked about this 5-parter specifically is it does not talk down to its audience. Like, this is meant for a younger audience. This is meant for kids, I'd say like 8 to 10 years old or something like that. But it doesn't talk down to its audience in that way. Like, it deals with some very heavy and heady concepts in this 5-parter, which makes it so incredibly effective.
Yeah, and like I said on the Power Trip, campy or not, you still have to have good writing. You can be campy and have good writing. And so you can't just hope that you can make poor writing, call it and say it's campy, and then people accept it. That's not necessarily the case. And Tolkien also talked about how stuff like this is, it awakens desire in the audience, desire for something like a world like that. Or, he goes on to also talk about G.K. Chesterton. We talked about the heart of a child and how, he says, Chesterton said, quote, "For children are innocent and love justice, while most of us are wicked and naturally prefer mercy." Which I think is interesting, which is why maybe that's why this story actually works, because the child audience, they see it and they want justice. That's what these superheroes are doing, right? They're dispensing justice. But as adults, we can look at it and we can see the mercy that's offered Tommy.
Mm-hmm. This story definitely teaches you forgiveness. There's a lot of really interesting concepts here that forgiveness, redemption, pretty high level things for a kid's show.
Yeah.
But it's framed in a way that kids can understand. I know we're running long, so I'm trying to.
Well, I'll just make a couple more quick points and then we'll wrap some things up here. But Tolkien also talked about that the 3 most important things that stories like this can offer are recovery, escape, and consolation. And so he talked about how recovery is, quote, "a regaining of a clear view. I do not say seeing things as they are and involve myself with philosophers, though I might venture to say seeing things as we are or were meant to see them, as things apart from ourselves. We need, in any case, to clean our windows so that the things seen clearly may be freed from the drab blur of triteness or familiarity, from possessiveness." So he's saying that stories like this allow us to see the world as it really is. And, I think what you see here in Power Rangers, I heard a friend of mine tell me that that's a very J.K. Chesterton idea about how certain genres of stories can say things that others can't. So something like, say, Power Rangers can say stuff about the nature of good and evil that some highfalutin literary story wouldn't be able to.
Right.
And then I'll mention really quick, he talked about escape. And I love this analogy because we've talked about escapism a lot in our podcasts and how that is a valuable thing. And some people write it off. It's like, why would you want to escape? And Tolkien uses the analogy of, why should a man be scorned if, finding himself in prison, he tries to get out and go home? Or if, when he cannot do so, he thinks and talks about other topics than jailers and prison walks. The world outside has not become less real because the prisoner cannot see it. So basically saying, like, if you use fairy stories to escape from the trials of the world, you're not ignoring reality. You're finding a way to escape from that prison. We would not begrudge a prisoner to escape from prison.
I think escapist media is necessary to do sort of that mental health reset in a way. I think it's necessary to have that escapist media because, like, what does escapist media give us? aside from an escape. It gives us an opportunity to, I know the phrase turn our brains off, but we're not, like when we say turn our brains off, we're not actually turning our brains off when we watch escapist media. We're diving into the familiar. We're diving into something that maybe this is a conversation about the lizard brain part of our, the lizard part of our brain that's very just simplistic, like keeping things simple. It's like why the best, I don't know, it's kind of like why the best ideas will come to me or come to other people when we're doing mundane tasks, when we're just kind of like just doing things like taking a shower, using the restroom, or just doing things that just are very repetitive. They don't take a lot of brain power to do, but I've had some of my best ideas where I'm in the shower and I'm just doing that, and it's a very mundane task. But at that point, I've kind of shut my brain off. I'm just doing a very simple task, or I'm watching a very simplified piece of media, and it helps. It helps as a reset. I think that's what I'm getting around to. It helps. Escapist media is necessary as sort of a reset for her.
Yeah, and then consolation. And this, I think, goes back to when we were talking about the nature of evil, because with Tolkien's idea about evil that we discussed, it offers hope because we know that evil is nothing. And if it's nothing, what can it do? So this last bit about consolation, have you ever heard the term eucatastrophe?
Is that the concept? Is that the idea that you have brought this on yourself?
No, this is a term that he invented. It's basically the opposite of a catastrophe. It is a sudden turn to joy, or the sudden happy ending.
Okay. No, I've never heard of that. Then
this is the moment when everything turns, and maybe could we make the argument that the end of this miniseries is a eucatastrophe? The Sword of Darkness is destroyed. Tommy is freed. The Rangers forgive him. The Rangers get a new Zord. Balance of power shifts a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to look at it, because I was looking at it from the mindset of, oh, this feels very abrupt. Like this feels like a very southern, like, boom, everything is good again, Yeah. But framing it in that, looking at it from that perspective helps.
Yeah. And it, like I said, it's stuff like that it gives the characters hope. It gives the readers hope, not only in the story, but outside of it. Yeah. And, Tolkien then went on in this essay to connect that to, the Christian story, and you got theological about it. And it's great. It's great because that's the mark, I think, of a good story, where you can put your characters in such dire straits that there comes that moment where there is that sudden turn and all becomes well again.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily expect it. Which, in some versions of the story, as we saw, thanks to the Boom Studios comics, we get a little bit of a what if, which is interesting.
A little bit.
Because we see what could have happened, and this is part of the legacy of this five-parter. Because not only we've talked about, it introduced us to a lot of fan favorite characters. It was a big turning point in the franchise. This is what solidified Power Rangers as a franchise, made it popular.
Right.
And, all of the characters, everything that we've gotten out of it, and then how they've tried to emulate that since then. But one of the other things that we've gotten out of it is one of the most popular characters to come out of the Boom Studios comic books is Lord Draken, who is an alternate universe Tommy Oliver, who is a villain. So it's very much like an old school DC thing, because they did that. They had an entire Justice League that were a bunch of villains called the Crime Syndicate that ruled in parallel universe. Interestingly, the evil Superman was named Ultraman, but okay. But so Lord Draken, he's Tommy, who, just like in the Prime universe, had the spell broken, but he chose to stay with Rita. It wasn't a magic spell. He made the choice.
He made the choice because he enjoyed the power and the control that it gave him.
Yeah. So he stayed with Rita and then basically helped her take over the world. And then he killed Rita and ruled the world himself. Mm-hmm. And then it just spirals out of control. And then he learns the corruptive magic spell from Rita and then uses it on that universe's version of Kim, turns her into Ranger Slayer. So he's continuing this legacy. So now he's been corrupted, and now he's corrupting Kim. Mm-hmm. And it keeps perpetuating. But what is he doing throughout that story, and then in Shattered Grid, famously, what's he doing? I have to have more power. Give me more power. I'm going to go collect all of these coins and power sources, make myself more powerful. It's this kind of nihilistic pursuit of more power. He must have more. And it's never satisfying because he's evil. He's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. But what is the antithesis of that, though? If we look at it, what is the antithesis of that need, that drive? Like when I think of the phrase like absolute power corrupts absolutely, like what is the antithesis of that?
Tell me.
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Oh, well, what's the antithesis of that? I think it would be like your aspirational heroes, who are always giving and serving with their abilities. Mm-hmm. That I think is the opposite of that, using power not for your own gain. It's kind of like, we get it at the end of this miniseries. What's one of the rules that Zordon gives the Rangers? Never use your powers for personal gain.
Mm. Well, I think really the simpler version of that would be love. Yeah. Love is the nucleus of all the things like forgiveness and redemption and if we look at even the Christian faith, like love, like why did Jesus sacrifice himself? Out of love. Yeah. Love encompasses all things that are good. We do good things for people out of love. We forgive those who have wronged us out of love. We allow people to redeem themselves out of love. Like love is the antithesis of everything.
Which I guess in a way makes it appropriate that Tommy is a Green Ranger, because in some color theories,
new beginnings.
Green is symbolic of rebirth. Mm-hmm. So in a way, Tommy is reborn at the end of this. Now he's a Ranger.
Yeah.
After he had spent much of basically this entire 5-parter being a bad guy. It's a heck of a story. Campy though it may be, it's a heck of a story.
It can't be. Yeah, you're right. It can't be, though it may be, as silly as some of those moments are, and as head scratching as a lot of it is.
Giant Tommy,
fog machine. Okay, as head scratching as that 5-parter is, and kind of just thinking about like Power Rangers as a whole being very campy and childish. Like there are moments like Green with Evil, and I think that Green with I don't think when the writers did Green with Evil, I don't necessarily I don't think they knew what a big impact it was going to have.
Oh, I don't think they did at all. I don't think they had any idea. But I think, like I said, as campy as it is, I think it tapped into some things that have helped to give it resonance, almost in spite of those other elements. Mm-hmm. And I think that's saying a lot. A lot. Like I said, you can do campy, but you still have to have good writing.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has gone on a little longer than I thought, and
it's been good though. We actually got more out of this than we expected to.
Oh yeah, for sure. But now it's time to start wrapping things up. Seriously, Jimmy? You've had somebody on hold for most of this episode, and he keeps insisting to want to talk. Okay.
They're whoever that person is, they're either incredibly desperate to talk to you, or I don't know, maybe they're just incredibly desperate to talk to you. I don't know what.
Oh, he doesn't want to talk to me?
Oh, he wants to talk to me? Like, why would they? Who? Oh, it's that guy? Why the hell would he want to talk to me for?
I can't believe WHG3 is even still on the freaking island. He's just been freeloading this whole time.
I thought that he got kicked off and sent back to wherever the hell he's from.
The British Isles? I'm a little surprised too, but I guess he wants to talk to you. Put him on the line, Jimmy.
Hello there, Mr. Hamilton. It's good to see you back on the island.
Oh, good Lord, he's day drunk.
Mr. George? Like the last time we spoke, you didn't sound like.
Well, I tell you what, Umber, since the last time we spoke, I've been a little bit under the weather, let's just say. Let me ask you, Mr. Hamilton, that's a very strong name, Mr. Hamilton there. It's a very strong Scottish name. How do you like that big hunk of plastic? And I'm not talking about what's under your girlfriend's bed that we got you.
Like, oh, Mr. That is incredibly inappropriate, but okay, it's fine. It's really beautiful, thank you. But like, I don't necessarily. But if I would have known that you were going to do that to my friends, I don't know if I would have taken it.
Well, I tell you what. You stepping away from that episode caused one of the greatest episodes ever of MIFV. In fact, your buddy Nate there can testify. It was one of the most entertaining episodes they've ever done. Just ask him yourself. Isn't that right, Mr. Marchand?
Admittedly, I've gotten some positive feedback from the tourists, and the analytics have been good.
Well, see, you can thank me. It is all me. Like, I did it all myself.
Mr. George, can I interrupt you just for a second?
Sure, you bloody...
It's Michael, thank you, but I think you need to go lay down and take a nap.
Well, I'll tell you when I want to take a nap, Mr. Hamilton. You don't tell me what...
Cut him off, Jimmy. Jimmy, cut him off.
You don't tell me what to do, Mr. Hamilton.
Oh, praise Jesus. Oh, thank you, Jimmy. That might be the best thing you've ever done on the show.
Honestly, what did you expect me to, like, what do you expect me to do in a situation like that when a drunk guy calls in on the show?
I'm amazed this is the first time that's happened.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's like the only time, I don't know.
Although there was when we were introduced to Dr. Dorov, that was interesting.
Oh, yeah. That guy's creepy. So creepy.
He's harmless, but he's creepy. Anyway.
Harmless, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. The jury is still out on that.
All right. But let's move on to some happier things. Right, Michael? And you know what those would be?
The Patreon shoutouts. Go Travis Alexander,
Danny DiManna,
me, who's sponsoring this episode, and I'm the co-creator of Kaiju Magazine.
I am a terrible host because I have to find the list.
Bex from Redeemed Otaku.
Dang that bit, Marchand.
The Cel Cast.
Eli Harris. Chris Cooke.
Damon Noyes.
Eric Anderson.
Ted Williams.
TofuFury. It's Morphin time, right?
It's Morphin time. Okay.
You had to squeeze that in there. We've gone the whole episode and we haven't said that. We had to get it in there.
And I haven't really even said listeners with attitude all that much.
You did say it once. Now we have as much power as the Power Rangers, or at least for a second.
I crave more power.
All right, Lord Draken, gatekeeper person. Exactly, Jimmy. We need to wrap this up before it falls apart even more.
I think honestly, I think it started to fall apart when Georgie Boy called in.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you want to talk about derailing? Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
So, really quick, I got to preview the next couple of episodes. So, next week, Kaiju lovers, you're getting a 5th Wednesday bonus episode that was mandated by my new boss because it's all about him. Yes, the Cameron Winter trilogy is what it has been branded of Godzilla the series. So the 3 episodes about Heat's run-in with a certain tycoon will be discussed on the show with my friends and your fellow patrons, Mr. Hamilton, at the Cel Cast. So I'll be joined by them. They're kind of returning a bit of a favor because they had me on their show a few months ago to talk about Rumble.
Which I watched, and it was fantastic. Not as good as mine and Travis's discussion on the movie, but it was still pretty good.
Oh, sure. Keep stroking that ego.
Make my ego grow! Okay.
There's another power trip line for you. And then we're getting back to Amerikaiju, our main series here for season 3 of the show with 1958's The Blob.
Oh, okay.
We're getting to The Blob, and I will be joined by my friend Eric Anderson, the founder of Nerd Chapel. So it'll be his first trip back since joining me for the milestone episode on GVK.
Oh, nice. That sounds like a fun time.
Yeah.
I love The Blob.
Travis is still trying to see the goo, right?
Yeah, it's been a little while since it's been a little while since Travis and I have recorded the podcast because we've been incredibly busy. But yeah, I think he still has a desire to see that goo.
Yes.
He wants to become very sticky with the goo. He wants to bathe in the goo. He wants to give you the old goo you. I don't know. Whatever. I'm done. I promise, patrons.
Yeah, you're done. Well, I'm just saying, next time he comes to the island, we do have some of the goo. He can't see it. And speaking of GVK, sort of, the next Godzilla Redux episode is going to be King Kong versus Godzilla.
Ooh, who are you going to have on for that?
Alyssa Goji Geek. At least that is the plan. She's a very busy woman of making her YouTube videos, writing books, and serving in the U.S. Navy. So,
thank you for your service.
Yes, but for sure.
I was going to say, if she can't make it, I know somebody who would love to do King Kong versus Godzilla.
Oh, John LeMay. Yeah, I had him on a little bit to talk about some unmade movies related to it. So
I know 2 people that would love to be on King Kong versus Godzilla.
And you're both of them?
How dare you assume? No, I was not talking about me. I'm not that arrogant. I don't have that big of an ego. I was talking about our good friend Kaiju Kim, because that was her first Godzilla movie.
Oh, yes, that is true. Yeah, so I guess I do have a backup just in case. And Kim would be more than happy to come back and talk some Godzilla.
But I will say this: if you wanted 2 guests on that episode instead of just 1, I know somebody else who would love to talk about King Kong versus Godzilla.
Oh, I know what we could do here. We could have a clash of content creator proportions like on Godzilla versus Kong with the 2 of you. Whoever loses gets canceled.
Well, I mean, I'm already canceled, so I guess Kim wins by default.
Well, so next month is going to be exciting for sure here on the Monster Island Film Vault.
Looking forward to it.
Yep. And now, Michael, we get to your favorite portion of any podcast, which is the shameless self-promotion. So go ahead, stroke your ego all you want for the next couple of minutes.
Thank you, sir. I do love stroking my ego. So if you're not familiar with me, my name is Michael. I am one of the co-creators of Kaiju Ramen Magazine. You can visit our website at kaijuramenmedia.com because we're more than just a magazine now. We're actually trying to become a little media conglomerate. So we have sections on our website where you can read news. Our friend Danny just published a fantastic little editorial that is a retrospective on Godzilla versus Gigan because this is Gigan's 50th anniversary this year. So go check that out. Also, you'll find links to all the projects that we're involved in, including our podcast, Kaiju Weekly, the Henshin Men podcast that celebrates Henshin heroes and their high-flying and high-kicking adventures, and the Power Trip, a journey through the Power Rangers franchise. Also, we just put out issue 5 of the magazine. It's out digitally now, and those feature some fantastic articles, one of which is written by yours truly, called The Power Trip, a journey through the Power Rangers franchise.
My journey.
Sorry, you're right. My journey through the Power Rangers franchise, which examines some of the themes found in the first 9 seasons of the show, which covers the original Saban era from 1993 to 2001.
And the next article might resemble this podcast
a little bit because I think we're going to put out this episode around the time issue 2 comes out, which will be part 2 of that 4-part article series, and where we discuss Green with Evil and its impact on the fandom.
Well, we might put this out on the Power Trip feed then. This is getting published in the MIFV feed a little bit sooner.
Right. Well, whatever, Nathan. Just let me do what I got to do here, man. Come on. Forget about it.
Be glad it's me and not Jimmy.
That's true. I hate to have Jimmy on my about stuff, but
hi, Jet.
Hi, Jet. So yeah, outside of the magazine stuff, you can find me on Kaiju Weekly, where our co-hosting Common talk about and celebrate the giant monster genre and all of its fun, campy glory. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus lately because we've just had so much going on with Kaiju Ramen Magazine, with the Kickstarter being fully funded, $11,000 worth of funded actually, which I've been giving some of this exclusive stuff on other podcasts too. So I will say that if you pre-ordered or you backed Kaiju Ramen Volume 1, which encompasses issue 1 through issue 4, that should be out in your hands come this May. So May is when it should be out in people's hands.
Well, you're talking to one of those backers, and he's going to be very happy to add that to the Sekizawa library here on the island.
Right. Oh, it is complete. It is very worthy. It's a very worthy entry to that library because the cover art by Matt Frank is fantastic. All the articles that we have featured in that volumized copy are going to be great with some little extra bonus content here and there for people to enjoy. Other than Kaiju Weekly, listen to the Power Trip. And you can hear other great, more in-depth discussions on all things Power Rangers, like you've kind of heard here.
Mm-hmm. And my 3-hour PowerPoint presentation on the symbolism of Astronomer's wigs,
which you think he's joking, but he's not. But
she used to work here, so I have a little bit of firsthand experience.
By the time this episode comes out, we will probably have published what? We're up to what? Lightspeed Rescue. By the time this comes out,
I would say either Turbo or In Space, actually.
Okay. So by the time this comes out, you'll have plenty to listen to with the Power Trip. We've had a great reception there. People seem to like what we're doing, and we're a very unique podcast in the regard of we talk about these seasons in broad strokes. We examine the Ranger teams, the Zords, the monsters, the villains, all of it. And we also, like we did here with Green with Evil, touch on some more of the thematic elements, which I think is one of the big things that sets us apart from other Power Rangers podcasts.
Indeed. All right. Now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, well, I think it's time that we gave you another little tour of the island. So, hey, Jimmy, cue those credits.
Thank you for listening to the Monster Island Film Vault, a podcast produced and hosted by Nate Marchand. If you want to join the discussion and be heard on the show, we'd love to hear from you. So email us at feedback@monsterislandfilmvault.com. Our website is monsterislandfilmvault.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Monster Island Film Vault, and on Twitter, where our handle is @TheMonsterIsla1. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, and TikTok. Follow Jimmy from NASA on Twitter @NASAJimmy, and our many other colorful characters using the links in the show notes. The podcast logo was created by Tyler Souls from TylerDrawsComics.com. Our theme song is Wanderer on the Offensive, live edit by B33J, Sarax, Juan Madrano, and Nonsensical Lexus, which is a remix of Counterattack Battle with the Colossus and The Opened Way Battle with the Colossus by Kootani from the video game Shadow of the Colossus. All film and audio clips belong to their respective copyright holders and no infringement is intended or implied. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and or Podchaser to spread the word about the show. You can also support us by joining MIFV MAX on Patreon. The Monster Island Film Vault is a Moonlighting Ninjas media production. Sayonara!